Good evening, everybody. Throttle Wisdom here. Welcome to After Hours. Tonight feels quiet. Calm roads, cool air. Just us and the motorcycle. Nights like this always slow the world down enough to think a little deeper. And tonight, I've been thinking about growth. Not the loud kind. Not the kind everybody sees. I mean the quiet growth, the internal kind. The kind that happens so slowly, you almost miss it completely. Because when you live inside your own life every day, it becomes hard to notice how much you've actually changed. Every day just starts feeling like another regular day. Wake up, go to work, handle responsibilities. Fight battles nobody sees, then wake up and do it again. And after a while, you stop recognizing your wins. Not because they aren't real, but because they became normal. That's the weird thing about growth sometimes. The things that once felt impossible eventually become routine. And once they become routine, we stop giving ourselves credit. We just move the goalpost again. We hit one milestone and immediately focus on the next, without ever slowing down long enough to appreciate what we already achieved. And honestly, I think a lot of us do that. Especially people who live inside the grind. Because when you're constantly focused on surviving and building, you rarely stop to celebrate yourself. You just keep pushing forward. Sometimes so hard, you completely miss your own progress. And maybe that sounds strange. But think about who you used to be a few years ago. Think about the version of yourself that struggled through certain seasons. That version of you would probably be proud right now. But current you barely even notice it anymore. Because now this life just feels normal. That's what happens when growth becomes your lifestyle. You adapt to things you once prayed for. And eventually, you stop seeing the miracle in it. You stop seeing the accomplishment. You stop realizing how far you've actually come. And maybe that's why reflection matters so much. Because reflection forces us to slow down long enough to recognize our own evolution. Not in an arrogant way, not in an ego way. Just in an honest way. Just acknowledging, yeah, I've grown. I've survived some things. I've become stronger than I used to be. That matters. Every single small victory matters. Even the victories nobody else sees. Especially those ones. Because some of the hardest battles happen internally. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And nobody around you can fully see those fights. But you remember them. You remember the nights you almost gave up. You remember the exhaustion, the doubt, the fear. You remember trying to hold yourself together through chaos. And now look at you. Still riding, still pushing, still building. That deserves acknowledgement. Not because you're finished, but because you kept going. And sometimes, that's the biggest victory of all. Just refusing to quit when life gets heavy. A lot of people underestimate how hard that really is. To keep showing up every day while carrying invisible weight. To still smile, still work, still function. Even when internally you're exhausted. That takes strength. And I think sometimes we become so hard on ourselves that we completely ignore how resilient we've become. We focus only on what still needs fixing. Only on the goals we haven't reached yet. Only on the areas where we still feel behind. And because of that, we overlook everything else. We overlook the discipline we've built, the wisdom we've gained, the emotional control we fought hard to develop, the perspective we didn't used to have, the patience we learned through difficult seasons, the ability to survive stress that once overwhelmed us. That's growth. Real growth. Not just money, not just numbers, not just status. Internal growth changes everything. Because eventually your mindset changes first. And your life follows afterward. That's why internal work matters. Even when nobody sees it, even when nobody applauds it. Because every healthy thought, every better decision, every moment of discipline, it all stacks over time. Brick by brick. That's how people transform. Slowly, quietly, consistently. And because it happens gradually, it's easy to miss. Kinda like these night rides. You ride long enough in the dark, and eventually your eyes adjust. At first, everything feels unfamiliar. But eventually, you become comfortable in it. Growth works the same way. The uncomfortable eventually becomes your normal. And that's actually proof you evolved. But instead of celebrating that, most of us criticize ourselves more. We become our own toughest critic. And honestly, sometimes we forget to be proud. Not cocky, not arrogant. Just proud that we didn't quit. Proud that we kept building. Proud that we survived seasons that almost broke us. That matters. And I think a lot of people need to hear that sometimes. Because not everybody gets encouragement growing up. Not everybody hears, "I'm proud of you." Some people spend their whole lives only hearing criticism. Only hearing what they lack. Only hearing what still isn't enough. And eventually, that becomes their internal voice. They stop celebrating themselves completely. Even when they accomplish incredible things. It just feels like, well, on to the next thing. No pause, no gratitude, no reflection. Just endless pressure to keep moving forward. And while ambition is important, so is acknowledgement. Because if you never acknowledge your progress, eventually the journey starts feeling empty. You keep climbing, but never allow yourself to enjoy how far you already made it. That's a dangerous mindset. Because life can turn into nothing but pressure. Nothing but chasing, nothing but surviving. And eventually, you forget why you started. You forget the excitement that once fueled you. You forget that you're actually living moments. That an older version of yourself used to dream about. That's the crazy part sometimes. The things we prayed for eventually become ordinary. Not because they lost value, but because we adapted to them. Humans adapt to almost everything. Even growth, even blessings. That's why gratitude matters so much. Gratitude forces us to actually notice life again. To stop overlooking the little things. The peaceful ride home, the late night air, the motorcycle under us, the freedom to ride, the fact we survived another week, the fact we're still here trying, still building, still healing, still evolving. That matters more than people realize. Because growth isn't always loud. Sometimes growth looks like handling stress better. Sometimes it looks like reacting differently than before. Sometimes growth is simply choosing peace over chaos. And most people around you will never notice those victories. But you should. You absolutely should. Because every healthy change inside you matters. Every lesson learned matters. Every difficult season survived matters. And honestly, sometimes we need reminders. Sometimes we need another person to point it out to us. Because we're too close to our own lives to see it clearly. We only see the stress, the pressure, the unfinished goals. Meanwhile, somebody else sees strength. Somebody else sees resilience. Somebody else sees growth we completely overlooked. And maybe that's why encouragement is so powerful. Because sometimes one sentence can wake somebody up. One genuine compliment. One honest moment of recognition. And suddenly they realize, damn, maybe I really have grown. Maybe I really have survived a lot. Maybe I've been too hard on myself. I think a lot of people need that. Not fake motivation, not empty hype. Just honest acknowledgement. A reminder that growth doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes growth looks like quiet consistency. And honestly, quiet consistency changes lives. Not overnight, not instantly. But over months, over years, over seasons. Little by little, you become somebody stronger. Somebody wiser, somebody more grounded. And one day, you suddenly realize you handle life completely differently than you used to. Things that once shattered you barely shake you now. Not because life got easier, but because you became stronger. That's real growth right there. And honestly, that kind of growth is priceless. Because nobody can take it from you. Nobody can erase the lessons you earned the hard way. Nobody can erase the wisdom built through struggle. That becomes part of who you are. And I think that's something worth respecting about yourself. Not worshiping yourself, not ego. Just respecting the journey you survived to get here. Because the truth is, some seasons were brutal. Some moments almost broke you. Some nights felt endless. Some mornings felt impossible. And yet, you kept moving anyway. That deserves more credit than most people give themselves. Especially people who are constantly grinding. Because grinders tend to minimize their accomplishments. They treat impossible things like they were expected. They survive difficult years and just shrug afterward. Like, well, I did what I had to do. But surviving hard seasons isn't a small thing. Building yourself mentally isn't a small thing. Learning discipline isn't a small thing. Learning emotional control isn't a small thing. Learning to keep moving forward through stress and uncertainty, that's not small either. And maybe we need to stop acting like it's normal. Because honestly, it's impressive. Not everybody keeps going. Not everybody chooses growth. Not everybody keeps fighting to become better. But you did. And maybe you haven't fully realized how meaningful that actually is. Maybe you've been too distracted by what's still missing. Too distracted by the next goal. Too distracted by the pressure to keep climbing. That you forgot to appreciate the version of yourself today. And maybe tonight, this is your reminder. You've grown more than you think. You've survived more than you realize. And you've become stronger than you give yourself credit for. That deserves acknowledgement. That deserves gratitude. And honestly, that deserves celebration too. Not because the journey is over, but because you made it this far. And for some people, making it this far was never guaranteed. That's real. Some people never escaped their old mindset. Some people never healed. Some people never kept going. But you're still here. Still writing, still building, still evolving. And that alone says a lot about you. More than you probably realize. And maybe that's why these quiet moments matter so much. These late-night rides, these empty roads. Because they give us space to actually think. Space to reflect without all the noise. Without notifications, without pressure, without distractions. Just the sound of the engine and your own thoughts. And honestly, and sometimes that's when clarity hits. Sometimes that's when you realize how much you've actually changed. Not physically, not externally. Internally. Your mindset changed. Your perspective changed. Your priorities changed. The things you tolerate changed. The way you react to stress changed. The way you carry yourself changed. That's real transformation. And honestly, that kind of growth takes time. A lot of time. People want overnight change. But real growth usually happens slowly. Quietly, almost invisibly. And because it happens slowly, it's easy to underestimate. That's why reflection matters. Reflection allows us to connect the dots. To realize, damn, I really did evolve. I really did become stronger. I really did survive things I once thought would destroy me. That realization matters. Because confidence isn't always loud. Sometimes confidence is simply recognizing your own resilience. Recognizing the battles you already survived. Recognizing the discipline you already built. That creates a different kind of strength. A quieter strength. The kind that doesn't need validation from everybody else. Because deep down, you know what you survived. You know what it took to become who you are now. And maybe that's enough. Maybe peace comes from finally learning to respect your own journey. Not comparing it to everybody else. Not minimizing it, not overlooking it. Just respecting the process. Respecting the growth. Respecting the effort you put in every single day. Because effort matters too. A lot of people only celebrate results. But effort deserves acknowledgement too. Showing up every day matters. Trying again matters. Staying disciplined when nobody's watching, that matters too. And honestly, that's where real character is built. Not during easy seasons. Character gets built during hard seasons. During stressful seasons. During seasons where nobody sees how hard you're trying. And maybe those are the seasons that deserve the most respect. Because those are the seasons that truly shape you. Those are the seasons that teach you resilience. Those are the seasons that deepen your perspective. And eventually, those seasons become wisdom. Wisdom earned through experience always hits differently, because it's not theory anymore. It's lived, it's felt, it's survived. That kind of wisdom changes people. It changes the way you see life. It changes the way you handle pain. It changes the way you value peace. Because once you've experienced chaos, you appreciate calm differently. Once you've survived hard seasons, you appreciate stability differently. Once you've struggled mentally, you appreciate peace of mind differently. That perspective is earned. And honestly, earned perspective is valuable because it teaches gratitude. Real gratitude, not fake positivity. The kind of gratitude that comes from understanding struggle. The kind that notices little blessings. Like a peaceful ride at night. A cool breeze through the helmet. An empty highway after a long week. The simple ability to breathe without pressure for a moment. Those little moments matter. But when we move too fast through life, we miss them. We overlook them completely. Always focused on the next thing. The next goal, the next problem, the next responsibility. And before we know it, life starts blurring together. Days become weeks, weeks become months. And suddenly we realize we haven't truly slowed down in forever. That's why reflection matters so much. Reflection reconnects us with our own lives. It reminds us that growth is happening. Even when it doesn't feel dramatic. Even when progress feels slow. Even when life still feels messy. Because healing is messy sometimes. Growth is messy too. People think transformation looks clean and perfect. But usually, it looks confusing while you're inside it. Usually it looks like small steps. Quiet discipline, tiny improvements. Choosing better habits consistently. Learning lessons the hard way. Getting back up after difficult days. That's what growth actually looks like. And honestly, but that kind of growth deserves respect. Because it's real. Anybody can look motivated for one good day. But consistency over years, that's different. That requires patience. It requires discipline. It requires believing in yourself even when progress feels invisible. And honestly, that might be one of the hardest parts. Continuing to build before the results fully appear. Continuing to believe before the breakthrough happens. That takes faith in yourself. And maybe tonight, you need to hear this. Your effort is not wasted. Your growth is not invisible. And your journey matters more than you realize. Even if right now, it still just feels like another day. That's the strange thing about meaningful growth. Most of the time, it doesn't feel cinematic. It feels ordinary while it's happening. It feels like repetition, routine, discipline. It feels like waking up tired and still moving forward anyway. It feels like surviving difficult weeks without falling apart. It feels like choosing peace instead of reacting emotionally. It feels like slowly becoming a different person over time. And honestly, that's beautiful in its own way. Not flashy, not loud. Just real. Real growth, real effort, real life. I think sometimes we underestimate ordinary strength. The kind of strength that quietly carries people through life. The kind that shows up every day. The kind that keeps responsibilities handled even when emotionally exhausted. That kind of strength deserves respect too. Because honestly, life gets heavy sometimes. Mentally heavy, emotionally heavy. And people still keep going anyway. That's incredible when you think about it. Humans are far more resilient than we realize. Especially when purpose is involved. Especially when people are trying to build a better future. That purpose changes people. It teaches sacrifice. It teaches discipline. It teaches patience in a world addicted to instant results. And honestly, patience is powerful. Because patient people understand something important. Big things take time. Real transformation takes time. Building yourself mentally takes time. Healing emotionally takes time. Creating a better life takes time too. And maybe that's why consistency matters so much. Because consistency carries you through the slow seasons. The invisible seasons. The seasons where progress doesn't feel obvious yet. That's where a lot of people quit. Because they mistake slow progress for failure. But slow progress is still progress. Growth doesn't need to be dramatic to be meaningful. Sometimes the strongest growth happens quietly, deep beneath the surface. Kind of like roots growing underground. Nobody sees the roots developing. But eventually, the strength above ground proves they exist. People are similar. A lot of our most important growth happens internally first, before the world ever notices it, before success becomes visible, before confidence becomes obvious, before peace becomes stable. The internal work happens first. And honestly, that internal work deserves more respect. Because it's hard work. Facing yourself honestly is hard. Healing old wounds is hard. Changing unhealthy patterns is hard. Learning emotional discipline is hard too, especially in a world that constantly tests your patience. But every time you choose growth, you change your future a little more. Every healthy decision stacks. Every lesson learned stacks. Every difficult moment survived stacks too. And eventually, those little moments become transformation. That's why consistency matters so much. Not perfection, consistency. Because perfection isn't realistic. Everybody struggles sometimes. Everybody gets tired, everybody loses motivation. But disciplined people keep moving anyway. Even slowly, even imperfectly. And honestly, that's enough. You don't have to become a completely different person overnight. You just have to keep building. Little by little, day by day. That's how real change happens. And maybe we need to stop disrespecting small progress. Because small progress compounds over time. Tiny improvements repeated consistently change lives. That's true mentally, emotionally, spiritually, even physically. Everything meaningful usually grows gradually. And honestly, that gradual growth is beautiful. Because it teaches patience. It teaches resilience. It teaches humility too. Because growth humbles people sometimes. It forces you to confront yourself honestly. Your weaknesses, your habits, your mindset. And that process isn't always comfortable. Actually, most meaningful growth is uncomfortable. Because comfort rarely changes people. Difficulty changes people. Pressure changes people. Responsibility changes people too. And maybe that's why hard seasons matter so much. Not because suffering is good, but because difficult seasons often reveal who we really are. They reveal our character. They reveal our discipline. They reveal how much we've grown. Because when pressure hits them, the truth usually surfaces. And sometimes that truth is powerful. Sometimes you realize, wow, I handled that differently. I stayed calmer than I used to. I didn't fall apart this time. Those moments matter. Because those moments reveal growth that daily life hides from us. Growth we didn't fully notice until we were tested. And honestly, that's one of the most rewarding feelings. Realizing you became stronger without even noticing it. Realizing your mindset evolved. Realizing your peace became stronger than your chaos. That's beautiful. And honestly, that deserves acknowledgement too. Because inner peace is something people fight hard for. And not everybody finds it easily. Some people spend years trying to quiet their minds, trying to heal emotionally, trying to find peace inside themselves. And honestly, that journey deserves compassion. Because internal battles can be exhausting, especially the ones nobody sees. The silent battles, the mental battles, the emotional battles people carry quietly every day. Sometimes people look completely fine, while internally fighting storms nobody knows about. That's why kindness matters so much. Because you never fully know what somebody else is carrying. A little encouragement can go far. A little patience can go far too. Sometimes one genuine moment changes somebody's entire day. Maybe even their entire perspective. And honestly, that's something worth remembering. Because we all need encouragement sometimes. Even strong people need encouragement. Even disciplined people get tired. Even resilient people have difficult moments. That's part of being human. Nobody is strong every second of every day. And honestly, we shouldn't expect ourselves to be. Sometimes strength looks like resting. Sometimes strength looks like slowing down. Sometimes strength looks like allowing yourself to breathe. That matters too. Because burnout is real. Mental exhaustion is real too. And if we constantly push ourselves without reflection, eventually we disconnect from ourselves. We stop appreciating life. We stop appreciating our own growth. Everything just becomes pressure. That's why balance matters. Not laziness, not complacency. Balance. The ability to keep grinding while still appreciating the journey. The ability to chase goals while still being grateful today. That balance creates peace. Because peace doesn't always come from reaching the finish line. Sometimes peace comes from realizing you're already growing. Already evolving, already improving. Even if you're not where you eventually want to be yet. And honestly, that realization changes everything. Because suddenly, you stop feeling completely behind. You stop feeling like nothing is happening. You start recognizing the progress that was always there. You start seeing your own effort clearly. You start respecting yourself more. Not from ego, from honesty. Because honest self-respect is healthy. Acknowledging your own resilience is healthy too. Especially after difficult seasons. Especially after years of growth that nobody else fully understands. That journey deserves recognition. Even if the world never applauds it. Because deep down, you know what it took. And honestly, that truth matters more than applause. Because applause fades eventually. Validation fades too. But inner growth stays with you. Wisdom stays with you. Perspective stays with you. The strength you built during difficult seasons stays too. That becomes part of your foundation. And honestly, a strong foundation matters. Because life will always test people. There will always be hard days. Unexpected problems, stressful seasons. Moments where everything feels heavy again. But when you've built yourself internally, you handle those seasons differently. Not perfectly, just differently. Calmer, wiser, more grounded. That's why internal growth matters so much. Because eventually, your external life reflects it. Your reactions improve. Your relationships improve. Your mindset improves. Your peace becomes stronger. And honestly, that's a powerful thing. Especially in a world that constantly pulls at people mentally. A peaceful mind is valuable. A disciplined mind is valuable too. And building those things takes years sometimes. That's why you should acknowledge yourself. Not every second, not arrogantly. Just honestly. You've grown, you've learned, you've evolved. That deserves recognition. And honestly, you don't need permission to feel proud. A lot of people wait for external approval. They wait for somebody else to validate their journey. But sometimes, you need to validate yourself. Sometimes you need to stop and say, yeah, I've been through a lot. Yeah, I've changed a lot too. Yeah, I'm still building. That kind of self-awareness matters. Because awareness creates gratitude. And gratitude creates peace. Not perfect peace, but real peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you're genuinely trying. The kind that comes from knowing you didn't give up on yourself. That matters more than people realize. Because some people quit on themselves early. Some people stop believing in growth. Some people become trapped inside old versions of themselves. But growth requires belief. Belief that change is possible. Belief that healing is possible too. And honestly, that belief changes everything. Because once somebody truly believes they can evolve, they start making different choices. Healthier choices, smarter choices. More disciplined choices. And eventually, those choices create a new life. Slowly, quietly, consistently. One ordinary day at a time. And maybe that's the biggest lesson in all of this. Life changes quietly before it changes loudly. Internal growth happens first. The mindset shifts first, the discipline develops first. The perspective deepens first. And eventually, your external life catches up. That's why small daily choices matter. Because daily choices become habits. Habits become character. And character shapes your future. That's powerful when you think about it. The future version of you is being built right now, through the choices you make every day, through the way you handle pressure, through the way you speak to yourself, through the way you respond to setbacks. That all matters. Even when it feels small. Even when nobody notices it yet. Growth rarely announces itself loudly. Usually, it whispers quietly over time. Until one day you suddenly realize you became somebody different. Somebody calmer, somebody wiser. Somebody stronger than before. And honestly, that realization feels incredible. Not because you became perfect, but because you finally recognize your own evolution. You finally stop overlooking yourself. You stop acting like your growth doesn't matter. Because it does matter. Every lesson matters. Every improvement matters too. Every difficult season survived matters deeply. And honestly, you deserve to acknowledge that. You deserve to respect your own effort. Because effort changes people. Consistent effort especially. And maybe tonight, that's what I want people to remember. Don't overlook yourself. Don't overlook your progress just because it became familiar. Don't overlook your strength just because you carry it quietly. And don't overlook your growth just because it happened gradually. Gradual growth is still growth. Quiet strength is still strength. And healing that nobody sees still matters. Maybe more than people realize. Because internal growth changes everything connected to your life. It changes your mindset. It changes your relationships. It changes your reactions to stress. It changes your confidence too. Not fake confidence, not ego. Real confidence built through experience. The kind of confidence that says, I've survived difficult seasons before. I can survive this season too. That kind of confidence is powerful. Because it's rooted in truth. It's rooted in experience, in resilience, in growth. And honestly, that kind of confidence lasts. Because nobody can take away the lessons you earned. Nobody can erase the wisdom you fought hard to gain. Nobody can erase the growth built through difficult seasons either. That becomes part of who you are. And honestly, that's something worth honoring. Not in a selfish way, not in an ego-driven way. Just honestly honoring your own journey. Because your journey matters. Even the messy parts, even the painful parts. Especially the painful parts sometimes. Because painful seasons often teach the deepest lessons. They teach empathy. They teach perspective. They teach gratitude too. And honestly, gratitude changes people. A grateful mind sees life differently. It notices blessings more easily. It appreciates peace more deeply. It appreciates ordinary moments too. Moments like this ride tonight. The road stretching endlessly ahead. The glow of lights in the distance. The sound of the engine humming beneath us. These moments matter too. Not because they're dramatic, but because they're real. And honestly, real moments are often the most meaningful. Not staged moments, not perfect moments. Just honest moments of reflection. Moments where you slow down enough to truly feel life again. I think people need that more often. Because modern life moves fast. Too fast sometimes. Everybody is rushing. Everybody is chasing something. And eventually, people forget how to simply be present. They forget how to appreciate now. They forget how to recognize their own lives while living them. That's why reflection is powerful. Reflection reconnects us with ourselves again. It reminds us who we are becoming. And honestly, that reminder matters. Because identity shapes direction. The way you see yourself changes the way you live. If you constantly see yourself as failing, you'll overlook all your growth. But if you start recognizing your own resilience, your mindset begins to shift. You begin carrying yourself differently. You begin respecting yourself more. Not from ego, from truth. Because the truth is, you've already survived a lot. You've already overcome things you once thought would break you. That matters. And honestly, you deserve to acknowledge that more often. Not because the journey is finished, but because every meaningful journey deserves respect along the way, even before the final destination appears. Because growth itself is meaningful. Healing itself is meaningful too. And becoming a better version of yourself, that's meaningful as well. Even if tonight, it still just feels like another ride. Maybe that's the beautiful part, though. Maybe life isn't supposed to feel dramatic all the time. Maybe real fulfillment comes from appreciating ordinary moments. Ordinary rides, ordinary mornings. Ordinary progress that slowly changes your life. Because honestly, a meaningful life is usually built quietly. One disciplined day at a time. One healthy decision at a time. One difficult season survived at a time. That's how people evolve. Not instantly, not magically. Just consistently. And honestly, consistency is underrated. People celebrate explosive success. But quiet consistency is what usually creates real transformation. Showing up repeatedly matters. Trying again matters too. Continuing to build yourself when nobody sees the progress yet. That matters deeply. Because eventually, invisible progress becomes visible. One day people suddenly notice how much you changed. How calm you became. How disciplined you became too. How grounded your mindset became. And sometimes they'll think it happened overnight. But you'll know the truth. You'll know it came from years of quiet effort. Years of learning, years of growing. Years of surviving difficult seasons without giving up. That's why you should never disrespect small progress. Small progress becomes massive over time. Just like small habits shape entire lives. That's powerful when you think about it. The person you become tomorrow is shaped by what you repeat today. That means every effort matters. Every healthy choice matters too. Every moment of discipline matters. Even when it feels insignificant. Because eventually, those moments compound into identity. And identity shapes destiny. That's why internal work is never wasted. Healing is never wasted. Learning emotional discipline is never wasted either. Even if nobody notices it immediately. Even if progress feels slow. Because slow growth still changes lives. And honestly, slow growth tends to last longer too. Because it's built carefully. Built patiently, built intentionally. That kind of growth creates stability. And stability creates peace. Not perfect peace, just stronger peace. The kind of peace that survives difficult seasons. The kind of peace that survives uncertainty. That kind of peace is powerful. Especially in a world filled with constant chaos. And honestly, people who build inner peace deserve credit. Because that takes effort too. It takes awareness, discipline, reflection. And most importantly, it takes time. Time changes people slowly. Not just physically, mentally too. Emotionally, spiritually. Every season leaves something behind. Every experience teaches something. Even painful experiences carry lessons. Sometimes, especially the painful ones. Because pain forces reflection. It forces perspective. It forces people to grow in ways comfort never could. And honestly, that growth deserves acknowledgement too. Because surviving difficult seasons isn't easy. Especially when you're carrying responsibilities at the same time. Especially when life expects you to keep functioning anyway. That takes strength people rarely talk about. The quiet strength of continuing forward while struggling. That's real resilience. Not pretending everything is perfect. Not acting tough for appearances. Real resilience is continuing anyway. Continuing to show up, continuing to build. Continuing to believe growth is possible. Even during difficult chapters. And honestly, that mindset changes lives. Because people who believe in growth keep moving differently. They don't see setbacks as permanent. They see them as lessons, as seasons, as moments to learn from. That perspective creates resilience. And resilience creates endurance. Which means people stop quitting every time life gets hard. That's powerful. Because honestly, life will always have difficult seasons. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be moments where motivation disappears. That's why discipline matters more. Discipline keeps people moving when motivation fades. And honestly, that's where real growth happens. Not during easy moments. Growth happens during difficult moments where people choose consistency anyway. That's where character gets built. That's where perspective deepens. That's where people slowly transform. And honestly, that transformation deserves respect. Especially when it happens quietly. Especially when nobody else fully understands what it took. Because sometimes your biggest victories are invisible. Victories over your mindset. Victories over fear, over doubt. Victories over old habits that once controlled your life. Those victories matter deeply. Even if nobody else sees them. Because internal victories eventually create external change. That's how transformation works.
Inside first, outside later.
And honestly, that process deserves patience. Real growth takes time. Real healing takes time too. But little by little, people become stronger. Wiser, more peaceful. And eventually, they become somebody they're proud of. And honestly, that's one of the best feelings in life. Looking at yourself honestly and realizing, I'm proud of who I'm becoming. Not because you're perfect. Not because life became easy. But because you kept growing anyway. That matters deeply. Because a lot of people spend years fighting themselves internally. Years doubting themselves. Years feeling trapped inside old versions of who they used to be. So when somebody slowly breaks free from that mindset, that's powerful. That deserves acknowledgement too. Because mental growth changes everything. It changes how people speak to themselves. It changes how they handle stress. It changes how they view setbacks. And honestly, those changes improve quality of life. More than money sometimes. More than status, more than appearances. Because peace of mind is priceless. And people who fight hard to build inner peace deserve more credit than they give themselves. Especially when nobody fully understands the battles they fought internally. That's why comparing journeys is pointless. Because everybody carries different battles. Everybody has different scars. Different lessons, different struggles. That's why growth should be personal. Not performative, not competitive. Just honest personal evolution. Becoming better than who you used to be. That's enough. And honestly, that's already a massive accomplishment. Even if the world never celebrates it. Because growth doesn't become meaningful only after applause appears. Growth is meaningful while it's happening. While you're trying, while you're building. While you're slowly learning how to navigate life differently. That process matters. And honestly, people deserve to appreciate themselves more. Not from ego, from gratitude. Gratitude for surviving difficult seasons. Gratitude for continuing to grow. Gratitude for the wisdom earned along the way. Because wisdom changes how people move. Wise people stop reacting emotionally to every little thing. Wise people value peace more. They value perspective, they value balance. And honestly, that balance creates a better life. Not a perfect life, just a healthier one. A more grounded one, a more meaningful one. And maybe tonight, that's the reminder. Don't overlook yourself. Don't overlook your growth just because it happened gradually. And don't overlook your strength just because you carry it quietly. Because quiet strength is still strength. Quiet growth is still growth too. And honestly, you've probably grown more than you realize. Even if tonight still just feels like another night ride. Maybe years from now, you'll look back on nights like this differently. Maybe you'll realize these quiet rides shaped you. These moments of reflection, these late-night thoughts. Maybe this is where your mindset changed. Where your perspective deepened. Where you slowly learned to appreciate your own journey. Because honestly, that's a skill too. Learning how to appreciate yourself without becoming arrogant. Learning how to celebrate growth without becoming complacent. That balance matters. Because gratitude and ambition can coexist. You can appreciate today while still building tomorrow. You can acknowledge your progress while still chasing bigger goals. Those things don't cancel each other out. And honestly, I think a lot of people forget that. They think acknowledging themselves means settling. But it doesn't. It simply means respecting the journey. Respecting the effort, respecting the growth. Because effort deserves acknowledgement too. Especially consistent effort. Especially effort nobody else sees. The mental effort, the emotional effort. The effort required to keep rebuilding yourself internally. That kind of effort is exhausting sometimes. But honestly, it's worth it. Because inner growth changes every area of life eventually. It changes relationships. It changes confidence. It changes peace of mind. It changes how people carry themselves. And honestly, that's the kind of transformation that lasts. Because it's built internally first. Not built on appearances, not built on validation. Built on experience, built on perspective. Built on surviving difficult seasons without giving up. That creates depth in people. And honestly, depth matters more than perfection. Because perfect people aren't relatable. But real people are. People who struggled, people who grew. People who kept building themselves anyway. That's relatable, that's human. And honestly, there's beauty in that humanity. Beauty in imperfect growth. Beauty in quiet resilience. Beauty in slowly becoming a healthier version of yourself. That journey deserves respect. Even if it doesn't always feel exciting. Even if it just feels like another ordinary season sometimes. Because ordinary seasons still shape extraordinary growth. Little by little, day by day. That's how people transform. Quietly, gradually, consistently. And maybe tonight, that's enough. Maybe tonight you don't need some massive breakthrough. Maybe tonight you just need to recognize your own growth. To appreciate your own resilience. To acknowledge how far you've already come. Because honestly, you've probably come farther than you think. Even if tonight still just feels like another ride home. And maybe someday, you'll fully understand how important these seasons were. The quiet seasons, the rebuilding seasons. The seasons where progress felt almost invisible. Because honestly, those seasons usually create the strongest people. Not because suffering is beautiful, but because difficult seasons force deeper growth. They force reflection, they force perspective. They force people to truly learn themselves. And honestly, self-awareness changes everything.
Because once you truly understand yourself,
You start making healthier decisions. You protect your peace more carefully. You choose your energy more wisely, too. That's growth. Real growth, quiet growth. The kind of growth that slowly improves your entire life. And honestly, that kind of growth deserves appreciation. Because it takes effort to evolve consciously. It takes discipline to break unhealthy patterns. It takes awareness to heal emotionally. That work matters deeply. Even if the world never sees it fully. Because honestly, the most meaningful growth usually happens privately. Inside conversations with yourself. Inside moments of reflection like this. Inside ordinary nights where you finally slow down enough to think. That's where wisdom develops sometimes. Not during loud moments, during quiet ones. And honestly, quiet moments are underrated. Because quiet moments allow clarity. They allow gratitude, they allow perspective too. That's why nights like this matter. Not because they're exciting, but because they reconnect us with ourselves again. And honestly, people need that more often. A chance to slow down. A chance to breathe, a chance to reflect. A chance to recognize their own growth honestly. Because growth deserves recognition. Not performative recognition, not ego-driven recognition. Just honest appreciation for the person you're becoming. Because becoming healthier internally is a massive accomplishment. Becoming more peaceful is too. Becoming more emotionally disciplined, that's a huge accomplishment. And honestly, a lot of people never realize how meaningful that is. They only celebrate visible success. Money, status, attention. But internal peace, internal growth, those things improve life in a completely different way. Because peace changes how life feels. Perspective changes how life feels too. And honestly, that matters more than people realize. Because eventually, people stop chasing chaos. They stop chasing constant validation too. They start valuing peace instead. They start valuing presence, balance, meaning. And honestly, that's where fulfillment starts appearing. Not in perfection, not in endless achievement, but in learning how to appreciate life while still growing. And honestly, that's a beautiful thing. because life moves fast. Too fast sometimes. One day turns into 1 week. 1 week turns into 1 month. And before people realize it, years have passed. That's why it's important to actually notice your life while living it. To notice your own growth. To notice the quiet progress happening beneath the surface. Because honestly, a lot of growth becomes invisible through familiarity. You adapt to your own strength. You adapt to your own discipline too. And eventually, things that once felt impossible become normal. That's incredible when you really think about it. The life you're casually living today might have once felt unreachable to an older version of yourself. That version of you would probably be proud right now. Proud you kept going. Proud you kept building. Proud you survived the seasons that almost broke you. And honestly, maybe you should be proud too. Not arrogant, not complacent. Just honestly grateful for who you're becoming. Because growth deserves gratitude. Healing deserves gratitude too. And honestly, survival deserves gratitude as well. Because not every season was easy. Some seasons demanded everything from you. Some seasons exhausted you mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And yet you kept going anyway. That resilience matters more than you probably realize. Because resilience changes people deeply. It creates perspective. It creates emotional depth too. And honestly, people with depth move differently through life. They appreciate things differently. They value peace differently. They value meaningful connections more too. Because difficult seasons teach people what truly matters. And honestly, that wisdom is priceless. Because wisdom changes the way people experience life. Wise people stop obsessing over appearances. They stop needing validation from everybody. They start focusing more on peace, more on meaning. And honestly, that shift changes everything. Because suddenly, life stops feeling like a constant competition. It starts feeling more intentional. More grounded, more meaningful. And honestly, that's a healthier way to live. Not chasing perfection constantly. Not constantly feeling behind. Just appreciating your growth while continuing to evolve. That balance creates peace. And honestly, peace is one of the most valuable things in life. Especially after surviving chaos. Especially after rebuilding yourself internally. That peace deserves appreciation too. Because inner peace is something people earn sometimes. Through healing, through reflection. Through years of learning themselves deeply. And honestly, that journey deserves respect.